The MuchMusic Spotlight is brought to you by Twix.
Isn't it just a new word for punk rock? That's what I think.
Term for I don't know, not slick pop music.
Yeah.
Not slick pop music.
They always need a new term to come up with. They always need a label so they can stick everything in a genre and they can.
Well, I don't even know if
whatever.
like it's also too. It's the alternative to the alternative now, and maybe that's where you guys are.
No, we're not making any conscious effort to be that way.
Right.
We're just playing music that we like and
Other people are listening.
yeah, that are influenced by other bands that we like.
When you're on the ground and keep falling down, remember how I made this sound.
Most of the time, Halifax, you think of like Rita McNeil or Dutch Mason. So are you coming out of this scene, or are you the only ones that are playing, guitar-based music?
We're coming out of a different scene. We're coming out of a scene that started in mostly punk rock bands in like 83.
This is like
something.
the 8th generation of the Halifax music scene.
Yeah.
I started playing in bands in about 85, in punk bands. And then this band started in like 91, the beginning of 91 or the end of 1990. Yeah. And we all came from different bands.
So it's not really new to be playing the kind of music you're playing.
Not really. I mean.
The recognition is new.
Yeah. And there's all kinds of bands. There's all kinds of music going on there as far as like rock, guitar-based rock music. Not just people are pretty up on what's going on.
With support all around him like a fence or a drink, he realizes the sadness that now he must begin to think.
This album, did you take what you learned from recording the first one and apply it to this one, or did you go in the opposite direction? What did you do?
It seemed like we had to completely relearn how to record, because when we recorded the first one, we did most of it in a day, and just there's mistakes on it, so we just put more guitars over top. Yeah, exactly. But this one we wanted to be a bit more sort of, not polished, but more refined, specific, and
more sort of planned out beforehand instead of like, okay, well let's do everything we can think of and then do it subtractively in a mixing stage. And this time we knew exactly what we wanted before we even recorded, so that was the difference.
Chart Magazine says.
That's right, Chart Magazine.
Chart Magazine, a reputed industry organ, as they call that sort of thing. Twice removed, best Canadian album of all time.
That's right.
And well, A, did you expect that? And what do you think of that?
This has ruined our plans, because to be critically acclaimed this soon after your record comes out, it's best to have your critical acclaim about 10 or 15 years later, and then everybody's all teary-eyed about, oh, why don't they make records like that anymore, and where did they go, and they go find me, and we end up doing some reunion tour and we get really big. But having critical acclaim this soon after, I think could be dangerous. Backlash.
You worried about the backlash, right?
Well, it worked out with our other plan, which was commercial suicide. Commercial suicide equals critical acclaim.
I don't know. I think it's kind of nice. I mean, it's a sort of a critics thing, I suppose. Well, critics and I guess people in the music industry in Canada. It's kind of a nice compliment to know that people like the records that you make, and we're just making records sort of for ourselves, and the fact that other people like them. It sounds like a pretty bland answer, I know, but I do think it's sort of cool. It's something to show, your mom and your relatives, to make it look like you're doing something.
And have you showed your moms and relatives?
Yeah, they're like scrambling out to the magazine stores trying to find it.
We want to demonstrate that we have the perfect balance of graciousness, oh thank you, but not too much like, yeah, you know what I mean, that balance. What do you call that? That balance?
I call it balance.
That's right.
Could you spare some common sense? Some brave gambles to just give it up. Now you know about those people in the sky. Well, they're the same folks that held me up.
It sounds to me like somebody's been listening to an awful lot of late 60s pop music, I'll tell you that.
Well, late 60s is where the best sounding records are being made. Like the best sounding, it's got the ideal sound, and you know, even the bands that had the most money to record, you know, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones or whatever, now to get records to sound like that, you have to do them as scrappy as possible, in a way.
Were you actually actively trying to get back to that sound somehow?
I think a little bit.
We're not
like
trying to, yeah.
Sorry, it's just because I think we like the way those records sound. It's not like we're trying to make some sort of retro record. Like Lenny Kravitz, it's overly obvious, I find, you know? But I think it's more like, well, those records sound awesome, and let's just try and record our songs in that manner, you know? That's all.
Attack with self-esteem, it's not much, but it's the best I got, and I thought you saw the good in everyone. The good in everyone. You see the good in everyone. You see the good in everyone.
Well, we spent, first of all, our budget was way less than last time on our second record, Twice Removed. That we had a huge budget, and we were able to basically use all of the best gear that we wanted, even though some of it was older gear, but we had money to do that, and this time we didn't. So we tried not to really play the game of trying to make, not that we tried to make the worst sounding record possible, but we didn't aspire to get pristine sounds. We just, since we don't have the maximum budget, and we didn't want to make it sound like we only had this much money to work with, we tried to just go somewhere, like go in a different direction, and not really, so that it wasn't a huge drag that we had financial limitations. I don't know. I don't mean to sound so contrived either, but I've yet to really be able to.
You know, I think if you're trying to bring guys, though,
I can believe it.
I think you can see that.
It's always the whole Sloan experience, and get a close up of me for this because I'm summing stuff up. The whole Sloan experience is a real after you, no after you, no after you, like so that it's democracy, but to a fault. So it gets a little overboard sometimes.
I thought you saw the good in everyone. Ooh, good in everyone. You see the good in everyone.
You have a lot of fans, and I heard from a lot of them when I'd mentioned one time, I don't get the beginning of, what was the first video from this record?
The Good in Everyone?
The Good in Everyone. I didn't understand the beginning of it.
Sure.
And all these people wrote to me and said, well, it's a direct ripoff.
They wrote to you?
Yeah, because I said, I don't know what's with the beginning of this video. And it was a ripoff of the movie Easy Rider.
Yes.
So you have a lot of fans who are
in touch with, we have a lot of budding directors who are fans of our band.
That was very cool, I thought.
Yeah.
We're gonna play the lines you amend soon. You know what's good about this video is there's been 3 videos from one chord to another.
Yes.
This is the first one. There's 3 vocalists in Sloan.
4 actually.
4?
All of us, yes.
Okay.
Andrew Scott has had a video already. He's our drummer.
Okay.
And we all change around and everybody sings.
Okay, so how does that work? Because this is the first video from this album that you sing.
That's right, yes. We usually try and, we sort of pick them ourselves a little bit, but we often just listen to them and see which ones would be appropriate for radio stations. I don't think we have like an agenda for singles, like it's not an ego battle over who gets, everybody's had a single in our band, so it doesn't really matter. And this time, there was like a couple of radio stations started playing the song already, so we decided to follow through with this one.
Okay.
And so we made a video for it.
And the video is kind of, is it on purposely Beatles-esque or Doors-esque?
Doors-esque. I don't know.
It's like it's a 60s feel. Some of the songs have a 60s feel on the record.
Sure.
But just the way it's shot, it looks like some 60s rock band footage I've seen.
Well, here's another, this is just another thing that we added to our list of things that we've been ripping off for the past 4 years. So we found this really cool picture of the Rolling Stones playing in like, it looked like an outdoor, racetrack. and there's just a huge crowd behind them, and people pressed up against the stage. Like if you go to shows these days, there's always a barrier and everything. So, but the shows back then, people were right at the stage and just looked awesome.
And there was
like
no drum riser in those days.
Exactly, yeah. So they're just like right there. So basically, from this one picture that we saw, we just tried to create a whole video around it, and that's what we did so far with this. And then there's a thing at the beginning where we tried to take some stills from the day and everything and make it look like a scene from To Serve With Love, which is a movie from the 60s with Sidney Poitier. Okay. So that's another thing we're ripping off.
First up, here's what you do to me. Get rough, attack with self-esteem. It's not much, but it's the best you got, and I thought you saw the good in everyone. Good in everyone.
And everything's going well with the record?
I think so. Our
the American thing?
Yeah, we've blown up really big in the States. Well, the States, for every band, American, Canadian, or otherwise, is a crapshoot. And it's a great big place, and there's no guarantees, but we're happy. We do really well in Canada. We've had sort of a steady rise, and in the States, it's sort of stop, start, and with no real pattern. But
you had no illusions about that anyway.
Yeah, I don't, not to, I don't care.
Yeah.
But I don't mind, rather. Not that I don't care. I care. But
I read some good reviews of the record.
Yeah, I read some half-decent reviews.
Press,
that's right. Got in the old Rolling Stone.
That's
and,
right.
That's right.
Well, that must be cool,
Yeah,
but that's not the first time you guys have been in there.
No, we were in Rolling Stone before, and in both cases we had a nice little 3.5-star review out of 5, in case you're thinking out of 10. But 3.5 is pretty good. You think 3.5 is kind of lukewarm, but
No, 3.5 is
3.5's all right.
Yeah, that's in the upper half of that scale.
But sometimes you'd rather, out of 10, you'd rather a 0 out of 10 than a 6 out of 10, because 6 out of 10 kind of is like, I like Sloan, but this is a bad record, The Niagara Falls area, but he's actually from Canada. What's a Big Bopper song?
How does it start?
Who sings Chantilly Lace?
And a pretty face with a ponytail hanging down, a wiggle and a walk and a something of the dark, and it makes the world go around. And nothing like the world like a big-eyed girl to make me act real fun, to make me spend my money. Make me act real loose like a long-necked goose.
Ooh, baby, that's what I like.
That's the story of the Big Bopper. Thank you.
All that changed in 1991 at the height of the grunge movement, when alt-rock quartet Sloan overwhelmed the college airwaves with their breakout hit and turned Halifax into a hell of a music scene. Liz West got together with the guys to hear firsthand their tale of rags to riches, to rags and riches.
She was underwhelmed, if that's a word. I know it's not, 'cause I looked it up. That's one of the skills that I learned in my school.
Here at eNow, we take special care to provide the star treatment for all our guests. We wine them and dine them at the finest restaurants, we take them to the most picturesque locations, and we invite them to do their favorite activities. So when East Coast rocker Sloan agreed to join us in Toronto, well, we pulled out all the stops.
Oh, do you know why we're here? Well, the real reason is because Goodwill is actually part of our mutual fund portfolio that we've been investing in recently, so we thought we'd come by and check and see how it's going.
The Halifax Fab Four came out of nowhere in 1991 and overwhelmed the alternative music scene with their Nirvana-like grunge. In order to release their debut single, the Sloan boys formed their own independent label called Murder Records. Within months, superpower Geffen Records had hooked the East Coast sensation and quickly re-released their signature hit. By 1992, the band had a dream deal, a hot debut album, and had single-handedly put the Maritimes on the rock music map.
We were part of a long-running music scene there that just never really got its act together. Because there were no record labels there, people weren't exactly rushing out there to see anyone. And we didn't invent anything, but we were the first band with the good fortune of connecting ourselves internationally. We went to LA and we skipped Toronto. That was our story at first, and that was the big deal.
Poised for international stardom, they followed up with Twice Removed, a more melancholy classic pop album which contained very little of their original Seattle sound. Their U.S. label's reaction? To quickly drop the record, eliminating any hopes for stardom and almost destroying the band.
I mean, it was a little bit daring, but it wasn't like in our mind. We thought it was a more commercial record, but our record company in the States thought it wasn't, they couldn't follow it, you know what I mean? It didn't make sense after our first album, so.
Were they expecting you to clone the first record?
Well, I think they were expecting us to, okay, take that sound and write some more songs and keep doing that for a few albums until you get platinum and then maybe do something different, or just like, oh, well, then you're old news.
I kind of thought at the time that I wanted to have a succinct career that didn't get tragic or anything, you know, self-parodying or anything. And I kind of thought at the time that maybe the best thing to do was to cut it off. But then we changed our minds.
Meanwhile, back on the home front, their label had invigorated the Halifax music scene. Murder Records had flourished by boosting local bands like Eric's Trip and the Super Friends. Now, the band was young when you started your own record label. How were you so smart at that time to know that that was a good move?
We've always talked about a safety net plan for, you know, people's attention at the major label might go away, but we want to invest in ourselves. We were smart about it. I know if I was always paranoid I was being ripped off, I'd be miserable. I'd go nuts.
So control is important.
Oh yeah.
It's fun running a record label. It's fun putting out records.
What about photographs sung by Ringo Starr?
The return to their roots gave Sloan renewed energy, and their latest release is their most cohesive and satisfying to date.
Don't you start, yeah.
I think it takes a lot of groups, 3 records, to sort of like explain to people what they're up to. And as now, I feel safe, and I feel confident that when we make our next one, you know, people will be expecting. They'll know not to expect what we just did, and we can do anything we want. I think we've written our own ticket. Right. Now we can do anything, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Do your time, pay the price for everything you've done wrong, baby.
After your experience in the U.S., are you ready to like give it another shot?
I feel that we're so set up. And I don't mean to sound crass, but financially, you know, a lot of bands will want to go for the States because that's where the big bucks are. I feel so confident with our own records on our own label that we make enough money with that and publishing and things like that, that everything else is almost just gravy. So if we go to the States and it happens, then that's great. But if it doesn't, it's not like the Holy Grail anymore. I think we'd rather go to Japan, maybe, you know? Just do different things. I feel like we're sort of...
Our record's coming out in Japan mid-May.
Good time. See, United States, see you later.
Yeah, screw you.
We just want to get some yen.
I dig his retro Birds haircut. Chris had it right. Their album is scheduled for release in Japan on May 16th.
And domestic sales of the album have already outsold both of their previous releases.
Sloan takes their Goodwill tour to the States next month.